Hey everybody, Miss Kendra's back again with some exciting action. Just kidding. Nickel and dimed. We're going to keep rolling. Actually, I think it's kind of exciting. I like to hear Barbara's story. I think she's a great writer. And I hope one of the things you're learning as we're reading this book is when I stop and tell you about the way Barbara describes something or I repeat a sentence, is you can really hear how she's choosing to put her words together in a way that really have an impact on the reader. I think that was certainly true when she was telling the story about the the restaurant workers smoking when she was down in Key West. She has a great way of describing a situation in a way that really makes you think twice about it, think harder about it. That's a hallmark of a good writer, as we've talked about before. So anyway, I'm going to jump right into it. This is part 5 of chapter 2 today. When we left off, Barbara had begun her job as a dietary aide at the nursing home and had met one of the cooks there and had been speaking with him about maybe getting together outside of work. So I'm on page 64. It was Pete. Sorry, page 65. It was Pete was the name of the cook at the nursing home that she had spoken with. Surprisingly, a number of the more sentient residents, remember she's in the Alzheimer's unit, so she's saying the ones who are able to kind of understand and remember a little bit better, are able to recognize me at lunch service. One of them grips my arm when I bring her ham steak, whispering, "You're a good person, you know that?" and repeats the accolade with each item I deliver. Another resident tells me I'm looking gorgeous, and one of the RNs actually remembers my name. This could work, I'm thinking. I will become a luminous beacon in the gathering darkness of dementia, compensating in some cosmic system of justice for the impersonal care my father received in a far less loving facility. So there we go. There's a great example of how Barbara took her words and really brought them to life. She used a little bit of figurative language there where she describes her work in the nursing home as it turning her into a luminous beacon in the gathering darkness of dementia. So she uses that metaphor of the beacon lighting up the darkness of the dementia that the patients are living in, and tells us that maybe she's would in some way compensate for the impersonal care her father received in the nursing home. Great writing there, very compelling. I happily fill the special requests for ice cream and grilled cheese sandwiches. I laugh at the Barbara Bush joke when it comes up again and again. The saintly mood lasts until I refill the milk glass of a tiny, scabrous old lady with wild white hair who looks like she's been folded into her wheelchair and squished. "I want to throw you," she seems to be saying. And when I bend down to confirm this improbable aspiration, the old fiend throws the entire glass at me, soaking my khakis from groin to ankle. "Ha ha ha," my erstwhile admirers cackle. "She wet her pants." But at least I'm no longer an outcast, as Pete would say, in this strange white state. I've been inducted into a world rich with gossip and intrigue, and now baptized in the whitest of fluids. So here she was, starting to feel a little bit positive about her role, that she's going to be a luminous beacon. And what happens? Well, some lady picks up a whole glass of milk and throws it right on her pants. So that's got to burst Barbara's bubble a little bit. And yet she realizes this is kind of her induction into the wild world of the nursing home. And now she's going to shift gears a little bit. So it's Saturday, and you remember at this point she hasn't moved into her apartment yet. She found one, but she's still living in the Motel 6. Saturday, my last night at the 6, and I refuse to spend it crushed in my room. But what is a person of limited means and no taste for carousing to do? Several times during the week, I have driven past the Deliverance Church downtown, and the name alone exerts a scary attraction. All right, we've talked about multiple times as we've read this book the figurative language trick of allusions. Now remember, I said it's not illusions with an I, it's an allusion with an A, A-L-L-U-S-I-O-N. It means alluding to or making a reference to something else. In this case, she makes an allusion to a movie called Deliverance. And I want to say it was out late 70s, early 80s, around that time period. I'm sure most of you have not heard of it because it's a good bit older than you are. But it was a movie set in rural America, and it had some very violent and disturbing scenes. So Barbara drives past this church, and it's called the Deliverance Church. But what that word deliverance means to her is it reminds her of this movie that has some unsettling scenes in it. So she's sort of contrasting the idea of a church with the idea that's supposed to bring you comfort and security with this movie that's disturbing. Okay, so I'll start that sentence over again. Several times during the week, I have driven past the Deliverance Church downtown, and the name alone exerts a scary attraction. Could there really be a whole congregation of people who have never heard of the James Dickey novel and subsequent movie? So the movie was based on a novel, but most people are familiar with the movie. Or worse yet, is this band of Christians thoroughly familiar with that story, and I won't read this part of it, of a sexual assault in the woods? The marquee in front of the church is advertising a Saturday night tent revival, which sounds like the perfect entertainment for an atheist down on her own. So Barbara's telling us that she's an atheist, but she's considering going to this tent revival. I drive through a menacing area filled with deserted warehouse. Dickie be gone, until the tent comes looming up out of the dusk. Unfortunately, from an entertainment point of view, only about 60 of the approximately 300 folding chairs are populated. I count 3 or 4 people of color, African, and I would guess Mexican Americans. Everyone else is a tragic-looking hillbilly type, my very own people, genetically speaking. Ehrenreich is a name acquired through marriage. My maiden name, Alexander, derives directly from Kentucky. So Barbara tells us here that her family is from the Kentucky area. She considers herself somewhat of a hillbilly because she's from that same Appalachian area that we all live in. So she says she sees these people sitting in the folding chairs, a couple of people of color, but the white people to her seem like familiar. Oh, these, genetically speaking, these are people I can relate to, she says. I chat with a woman sitting near me. Nice night, you come far? And things like that. And she lends me her Bible, since I seem to be the only one present without a personal copy. It's a relief when one of the 10 or so men on the stage orders us to stand and start singing, because the folding chair is torturing my overworked back. You remember she had to bend down, fill up the rack for the dishwasher full of dishes and then bend down and load it in and then bring it back out. So obviously she's exhausted and her back is hurting from that. I even joined in the rhythmic clapping and swaying, which seems to define a minimal level of participation. There are a few genuine adepts present who throw themselves rapturously into the music, eyes shut, arms upraised, waiting no doubt for the onset of glossolalia. So, they're very much into this moment, singing, swaying their hands, waiting for this sort of divine moment to descend upon them. But before anything interesting can happen, the preaching commences. A man in shirt sleeves tells us what a marvelous book the Bible is and bemoans the fact that people buy so many inferior books when you really need just the one. Someone on TV tells you to read some secular book, and then it goes up, what's the word? I think sales is the word he wants, but no one can figure out how to help him. Anyway, it could be 300, and then it's a ratio of 10 to 1. Huh? Next, a Mexican-American follower takes over the mic, shuts his eyes tight, and delivers a rapid-fire summary of our debt to the crucified Christ. Then it's an older white guy attacking this wicked city for its heretically inadequate contribution of souls to the revival, which costs money, This tent didn't just put itself up. We're talking overhead, he goes on, not someone making money for themselves. And when you consider what Jesus gave so that we could enjoy eternal life with him in heaven, I can't help letting my mind wander to the implications of Alzheimer's disease for the theory of an immortal soul. Let me read that sentence again. I can't help letting my mind wander to the implications of Alzheimer's disease for the theory of an immortal soul. Who wants an afterlife if the immediate pre-afterlife is spent clutching the arms of a wheelchair, head bent back at 45-degree angle, eyes and mouth wide open and equally mute, like so many of my charges at the Woodcrest, which is the nursing home? Is the soul that lives forever the one we possess at the moment of death, in which case heaven must look something like the Woodcrest, with plenty of CNAs and dietary aids to take care of those who died in a state of mental decomposition? Or is it our personally best soul, say the one that indwells in us at the height of our cognitive powers and moral aspirations, in which case it can't possibly matter whether demented diabetics eat cupcakes or not, because from a pure soteriological standpoint, they're already dead. This is heavy, heavy philosophical stuff she's thinking about here. She's saying, if there's an afterlife and someone dies, is it the person that they were at the moment of death? And if that's the case, all these Alzheimer's patients I'm caring for, is that who they are in heaven, the person that they are now? Or is it the person that we are when we're at our best, intellectually, morally? Wow, it's heavy. It's a lot to think about, and it's something that she's sort of struggling with as she's at this tent revival. One more paragraph and I'll stop. The preaching goes on, uninterrupted with dutiful amens. It would be nice if someone would read this sad-eyed crowd the Sermon on the Mount, accompanied by a rousing commentary on income inequality and the need for a hike in the minimum wage. But Jesus makes his appearance here only as a corpse. The living man, the wine-guzzling vagrant, and precocious socialist is never once mentioned, nor anything he ever had to say. Christ crucified rules, and it may be that the true business of modern Christianity is to crucify him again and again so that he can never get a word out of his mouth. I would like to stay around for the speaking in tongues should it occur, but the mosquitoes, worked into a frenzy by all this talk of his blood, are launching a full-scale attack. I get up to leave, timing my exit for when the preacher's metronomic head movements have him looking the other way, and walk out to search for my car, half expecting to find Jesus out there in the dark, gagged and tethered to a tent pole. Ooh, so she wasn't impressed with this tent revival because the Jesus that she's most familiar with, she says, these are her words, not mine, is one who would be arguing for a hike in the minimum wage, for social justice, for better income equality. And she says, this is not the Jesus that I hear at this tent meeting. And it bothers her a little bit. So she gets up to leave. So, you know, it's interesting to hear her intersect with this religious meeting and consider how her experience at the nursing home and how her own political views intersect with what's happening at this tent revival. So I hope you'll spend a little time thinking about that when the video is over, because I think she brings up some interesting points for us to chew on. Okay, well, that's it for today, and thank you for joining me, and we'll keep rolling on as the book progresses. Miss you guys. See ya. Bye-bye.